I turned into my driveway and slammed the brakes. 5 vehicles blocked the road, utility trucks, HOA pickups, and a rented van with hazard lights flashing. More than a dozen people were already spread across my land. Men in reflective vests were lifting my fence panel like it didn't exist. One slapped a red water shut-off notice on my pipe. Another was planting orange flags in the dirt. Someone else stood near my porch filming my house without saying a word. In the middle of it all stood the HOA president, calm, smiling, giving orders. "Emergency action," she said. "This area is under HOA control. I told them to leave. Nobody moved." Then she pointed at the flags and said quietly, "This part was never yours." Mara Voss acted like none of this was unusual. While her people kept planting flags and snapping photos, she walked straight toward me, already talking, already in control. "You need to understand something," she said. "This didn't start today." She gestured toward the shaded strip on her tablet, the same area her crew was marking. "For years, the HOA has dealt with complaints about this boundary. Drainage, access, utilities. You were always going to be part of this." That was the move, rewriting history out loud. I told her the county had ruled on my property lines more than once. I told her nothing under this land belonged to the HOA. Mara nodded like she'd expected me to say that. "County decisions change," she replied, "especially when safety is involved." One sentence, one motive. Safety, the word people use when they want permission to take things. She explained it calmly, almost kindly. The HOA planned to install shared infrastructure, pipes, lines, easements, and that narrow strip along my lot. According to her, it was always intended for community use. "You can cooperate," she said, lowering her voice, "or we move forward without you." Behind her, I watched one of her volunteers check boxes on a clipboard he didn't understand. Another measured distances that didn't belong to him. Mara smiled, confident, rehearsed. She wasn't guessing. She wasn't bluffing. She believed paperwork could turn possession into ownership, and that I'd back down once the machine started moving. She didn't see a homeowner. She saw an obstacle. The first pressure didn't come from letters or meetings. It came from movement. Every morning after the takeover attempt, someone new appeared near that flag strip, measuring, photographing, double-checking lines that had already been checked for years. A pickup idled on the shoulder too long. A vest lingered at the fence, pretending to read a clipboard. Once a man walked the boundary with his phone held low, camera angled up like he thought subtlety was a skill. I told them to leave. They said they were verifying. One afternoon, my water pressure dipped for 10 minutes, came back on its own. The utility company blamed routine fluctuations. The next day, a temporary no parking access required sign appeared at the edge of my driveway, staked into my dirt. I pulled it out and leaned it against my garage. By evening, a neighbor I barely knew stopped by. He didn't step onto my property, just hovered at the line, eyes darting. "Off the record," he said, "the HOA says that strip's going to be repurposed." For what I asked. He shrugged. "Infrastructure. That's the word they're using. Infrastructure. A word broad enough to mean anything and nothing. The friction stayed small on purpose. No explosions, no threats. Just enough to make it clear the ground under my feet was suddenly up for debate. And every time I pushed back, the answer was the same: talk to the board. The board meeting was scheduled for a Tuesday night and labeled "Emergency Session, no agenda, no homeowner comments allowed." That told me everything. Mara sat at the center of the table, hands folded, voice calm. She didn't argue. She presented. Slides clicked forward. Diagrams appeared. Arrows, shaded zones. That same narrow strip now labeled utility corridor. She talked about drainage optimization, shared access, long-term planning. She talked about risk mitigation without once mentioning a single incident. When someone asked why my land was involved, she smiled and said, "Because it already is." A board member cleared his throat. "Do we have county approval?" Mara didn't answer directly. "Approval is a process," she said. "Tonight we're aligning." Then came the vote, fast, procedural, framed as internal housekeeping. A resolution authorizing the HOA to coordinate access along the proposed corridor. No one said my name. They didn't have to. The next morning the emails went out. Notice of coordinated access, adjacent property owners. I was listed as non-compliant. By noon, 2 contractors showed up with stakes and spray paint. I asked for paperwork. They pointed to the email. I asked for a permit. They said HOA's handling it. That was the moment the conflict stopped being neighbor level. The system had entered the room, and it was moving without asking. I went to the county clerk's office because paperwork leaves fingerprints. It took 20 minutes to find the discrepancy. A filed clarification attached to an old plat map dated 3 weeks earlier. Same boundary, same strip, same lie. Only now the line nudged just far enough to brush my lot. The signature at the bottom wasn't the county's, it was forged. I pulled the adjacent filings and saw the pattern. The corridor didn't stop at my property. It continued downhill straight toward a parcel recently optioned by a private developer, one the HOA had publicly opposed until last month. Now the dots connected. This wasn't about safety, it was about leverage. If the HOA controlled the corridor, the developer got guaranteed access. If the developer got access, the HOA got paid consulting fees, community improvements, the kind of money that never shows up as a bribe but smells like one. Mid-seven figures by the look of the draft agreement tucked behind the filing. My stomach tightened, not fear, not anger, but clarity. They hadn't marked my land because it was convenient. They marked it because it was essential. I requested certified copies and walked out with a folder heavy enough to change the tone of every conversation going forward. As I reached my truck, my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. Stop digging. The board won't protect you next time. I looked back at the county building, then at the flagged strip waiting for me at home. This wasn't a misunderstanding anymore. It was a deal. The county didn't move fast, but it moved clean. 2 days after I filed my records request, a county surveyor called. Not defensive, not curious. Precise. He asked for my original deed, the last certified plat, and permission to walk the boundary with his equipment. He showed up the next morning with a tripod, a laser unit, and a demeanor that said he'd already smelled something wrong. We didn't talk much while he worked. Numbers don't need conversation. After an hour, he straightened, checked his tablet, and frowned not at the data, but at the filing reference. This clarification, he said, tapping the screen, doesn't match the county archive. I told him it wouldn't. By noon, he'd sent a preliminary note to the county utilities office. That's when the calls started, short, professional, careful. A utilities coordinator asked whether the HOA had contacted me directly. A regulator asked who authorized the access tags. A clerk asked if I'd received a permit notice. I answered honestly. No, no, no. That afternoon, Mara's tone changed. She stopped smiling and started CCing people. County addresses, legal assistants, consultants with impressive titles and vague scopes. She emailed about ongoing cooperation and temporary measures, careful not to repeat the lie she'd already put on paper. Then, code enforcement arrived. Not with threats, with questions. They took photos of the flags, the stakes, the access signs blocking my driveway. They asked who placed them. They asked under what authority. They asked why a private HOA was acting like a utility provider. I watched their faces shift, not dramatically, just enough. That's the look officials get when they realize they've been used. Before they left, one of them said quietly, "Don't remove anything else. Let it sit." The pressure had flipped, and everyone felt it. The whistleblower didn't come forward bravely. He came forward tired. A board member emailed me after midnight, no greeting, no explanation, just a forwarded thread and a single line. "You didn't get this from me." The thread was ugly. Internal, unfiltered. Mara coordinating access windows. A consultant assuring her the corridor was essential to the developer's timeline. A spreadsheet projecting low seven figures labeled community benefits with a note beneath it. Distribute after easement secured. There it was. The motive. The money. The order of operations. And at the bottom of the chain, the line that ended any chance of this staying civil. If he refuses, proceed without consent. County will follow once we establish necessity. I sent everything to the county utilities director and the state regulator. No commentary, just files. By morning, the HOA's posture collapsed. Contractors vanished. Flags stopped appearing. The driveway signs came down quietly without announcement. Mara sent a final email claiming temporary pause pending review. Too late. At noon, a certified notice arrived on my porch. Emergency county hearing utilities and easements review. Attendance required. Mara called me once, straight to voicemail. Her message was tight, controlled, and just a little cracked. "This doesn't have to become adversarial. We can resolve this internally." I deleted it. That evening, the neighborhood went silent in a new way. Not the watchful kind, the waiting kind. People peeked from windows. A few nodded when they saw me. One neighbor whispered, "We heard." By nightfall, the county confirmed it. Officials, surveyors, and council would attend. The developer was named. The filings were under review. The system wasn't just looking anymore. It was convening. And whatever Mara thought she was building with flags and forged lines was about to face something she couldn't schedule, spin, or control. The hearing was set for the morning. The county hearing room filled fast. Not with neighbors, but with people who carried folders instead of opinions. Surveyors, utilities officials, 2 county attorneys, a state regulator I recognized from the email chain, and at the far end of the table, Mara Voss arrived late, heels, sharp jaw, tighter than usual, a consultant whispering urgently at her side. She took the floor first. "This HOA has acted in good faith," Mara said, voice steady. "We identified a long-standing infrastructure risk and moved to protect the community. No speeches, no drama, just control." Then the county utilities director leaned forward. "Before we discuss risk," he said, "we need to address authority." He clicked a remote. The screen lit up with a clean boundary map, the certified one. "My deed, my line, unbroken. This parcel," he continued, "is not under HOA jurisdiction. It never has been." Mara shifted. "That's disputed." The surveyor spoke next, calm and fatal. "No, it isn't. The clarification filed last month was altered. The signature is not ours." The room went quiet. Mara opened her mouth again, but this time a county attorney raised a hand. "Hold," she said. "We're not finished." The next slide wasn't a map. It was money. A spreadsheet appeared, payment flows, highlighted dates aligned. Low 7 figures routed through a developer's holding company. Consulting fees. Community improvements. All contingent on securing a utility corridor. The state regulator spoke once. "This agreement requires a legally recorded easement, which you did not have." Another click. Emails filled the screen. Mara's words unedited. "Proceed without consent. County will follow once necessity is established." A murmur rippled through the room. Not outrage, recognition. The county attorney turned to Mara. "Did you authorize access to private land without a permit?" Mara didn't answer. She looked at her consultant. The consultant didn't look back. The attorney continued. "Did you instruct contractors to mark boundaries you knew were disputed?" Silence. "Did you accept or expect compensation tied to securing that corridor?" Mara's control slipped, not loudly, just enough. "I was acting for the community," she said. The regulator closed his folder. "No," he replied. "You were acting for a deal." The chair of the hearing didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. "Based on the evidence," she said, "the county is issuing an immediate stop order on all HOA activity related to this parcel." She turned a page. "The altered filing is referred for criminal review." Another page. "The developer agreement is suspended." Mara stood abruptly. "You can't do this without." "Sit down," the county attorney said flat. Mara didn't sit. She froze, caught between standing and falling. Then came the last blow. "The HOA," the chair continued, "is hereby removed from any role in utility coordination. All prior actions are void. Miss Voss, you are named personally in the referral." The word "personally" landed like a hammer. Mara finally sat smaller now, eyes darting, control gone. Around her, officials packed their files. Decisions made. Systems corrected. No applause, no speeches, just the sound of a machine snapping back into place. As people stood to leave, the utilities director paused beside me. "Your land remains yours," he said. "Always was." Mara didn't look at me. She couldn't. The corridor was dead. The deal was exposed. And the kingdom she tried to build collapsed in a single morning. The room didn't empty all at once. It loosened. Officials gathered their folders and spoke in low, efficient voices near the door. The surveyors compared coordinates like this was just another job, which, for them, it was. A county aide unplugged the projector and coiled the cable with practiced calm. The tension that had filled the room minutes earlier didn't vanish. It thinned like fog burned off by daylight. I stayed seated for a moment, hands flat on the table, realizing something small but important. I wasn't bracing anymore. Through the glass wall, a few neighbors lingered in the hallway. Not the loud ones, not the ones who always spoke first. These were the people who'd watched the flags go up and stayed silent. One by one, they met my eyes. No speeches, no excuses, just a quiet acknowledgement that they'd seen what had really been happening. A woman I barely knew pressed her lips together and mouthed, "I'm sorry." That was enough. Behind me, someone whispered, "She really thought she could do that." Another voice replied, tired and resigned, "She's been doing it for years." Mara still sat at the table, staring at the wood grain like it might rearrange itself into a better outcome. No outburst, no final performance, just the stillness of someone who had lost the ability to move a room with words. When I finally stood, the tension followed me out, but lighter now, like a bruise will fade. My phone buzzed before I reached the parking lot. The county attorney had already sent a written summary, clean, direct, and mercilessly factual. The altered filing was formally referred for criminal review. The HOA was barred from initiating or coordinating any infrastructure access without unanimous homeowner consent, third-party survey verification, and direct county oversight. The developer's agreement was suspended pending investigation. And then, the line that mattered most: all actions taken against your property are nullified. No easement exists. None may be implied. Inside the building, raised voices finally broke through the walls. Board members arguing, consultants scrambling to distance themselves, people realizing that emails don't disappear just because you wish they would. Mara emerged with her counsel a few minutes later. She didn't look at me. She couldn't. The story she'd built no longer had a place for eye contact. Her attorney paused beside me, professional but honest. "This will move quickly," he said. I believed him. A utilities official stepped up next, lowering his voice. "You probably saved the county a decade of lawsuits," he said. "This kind of shortcut spreads if nobody stops it." I watched as a clerk handed Mara a stamped notice receipt, acknowledged referral, confirmed. Paper has weight when it's finally telling the truth. The law hadn't taken sides. It had taken shape. By the time I got home, the flags were already gone. Not ceremoniously, not apologetically, just removed bare dirt where they'd been like they were never meant to exist. The driveway was clear, the fence panel stood straight again, hinges aligned, chain intact. I walked the boundary once, slow and deliberate, hands in my pockets, listening to the sound return, the real sound. Wind through dry grass, a distant engine, nothing else pressing in. A county truck rolled past and stopped. The same surveyor leaned out the window. "We'll file the corrected plat this afternoon," he said. "Permanent record." "Appreciate it," I replied. As he drove off, I noticed something new at the community entrance, a temporary HOA notice bolted to the board. "All projects suspended pending review." No logo, no president's name, just facts. That evening I sat on my porch as the light thinned and the land settled back into itself. Not victorious, not relieved, just intact. I didn't add cameras. I didn't reinforce locks. I didn't need to. Instead, I printed one page and slid it into a clear sleeve on my gate. Private property boundaries verified by county record, all access by permit, only, simple, boring, effective. Because the real win wasn't watching Mara lose power. It was knowing that when the system finally looked, really looked, it remembered what it was supposed to protect. And it wasn't her kingdom. It was the line between what's yours and what no one ever gets to take.